Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Politics with Laura May Lindo. I am your host, Laura May, and I want to begin today with a reflection because here we are on land held down, cared for, loved, and stewarded by the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. And oftentimes, when I begin, I explain to everybody that we're on the Haldeman Tract. This is land that 6 miles on either side of the Grand River were promised to First Nations or Six Nations. However, I happen to also be hosting today's episode from my mom's home out in Scarborough. And this is also part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum. And the reason I raise that in particular is because I've been reflecting on the conversation that we're about to have. So today I've invited two students. I have Noah Van Alphen and Raven Leach, who are both students at the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. And they're coming to speak to me about a motion that has been tabled that would change the flag protocol so that they could no longer fly the pride flag along with other flags, including things like the Every Child Matter flags or the Black Lives Matter flags. And so my reflection is actually based on that. My reflection is thinking about the role that we play as both allies and also as those that are impacted by protocols and pieces of legislation that might actually harm our communities. And what I've been thinking a lot about is the fact that we often feel disempowered when these kinds of moments happen in history. But Indigenous community members, with all of the fighting that they've done over history, remind us that we are, in fact, empowered as long as we're creative. And so I'm going to be right back after this break with Noah and Raven, two examples of young people who are showing us what creative leadership looks like right here, right now. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. First off, let me introduce you to Noah and Raven. Noah and Raven, thank you so much for joining me. I'm actually going to jump right in because we have a lot to talk about. So, my very first question for you, and why don't we start with you, Noah? My first question is this. What has inclusion looked like in your school community, and why is our active attention to building inclusive spaces in our schools so important across this province?
For me, for inclusion in my school community, it's very much looked like school groups like Real and Seek, and teachers and administration showing support to students. There's been a lot of recently teacher inclusion and inclusion in the curriculum they teach, and administration work towards making sure everyone feels respected and heard from and welcomed at school. And then
Mhm.
in terms of just importance, I think that inclusion is really important in school for students to feel supported and welcomed and just have a good school experience. I also think that inclusion is really necessary for the education standpoint of things. You
Mhm.
need to include many groups and perspectives in curriculum when you're teaching and focusing on educating people on just the world in general.
Thank you so much for that, Noah. And you know what's so important that you pointed out not just inclusion in the curriculum. We have a lot of conversations. In fact, I've interviewed folks who have talked about inclusion in the curriculum, but also like how it makes you feel that sense of belonging inside the school, like when you're walking down the hallways. So what about you, Raven? What has inclusion looked like, and why is the fight to build these inclusive spaces so very important?
Yeah, I mean, as Noah said, we have a lot of different groups at school. I'm part of both Real Group and SEEK, which is Respect and Equality for Allies and LGBT, and Student Equity and Engagement Council, and both are focused on like inclusion and equality within our school.
Mhm.
So that's been a really big part. It's a really big community where you can find other people who feel the same as you, who maybe identify the same as you. And it's just an area where you feel safe and comfortable. And that's probably my biggest thing with school.
Yeah.
And then also, as Noah mentioned, we have a bunch of murals at school, and some of them have very inclusive imaging, including both like LGBTQ plus, but also there's a lot of like different languages and flags and things like, so that's really interesting, really cool.
That's really, and it's also so very important. I was watching the news and we're seeing a lot of shifts in what's allowed and not allowed in schools in the US right now. We're seeing it more overtly in the news. And I've been reading stories of people having to take down their like everyone belongs here posters and that kind of stuff. As we have seen people question the goals of equity and inclusion. So I'm wondering if given our context, not just in Ontario, but specifically in Waterloo region, let's talk about these groups. Like, let's talk about the kind of work that you folks do in those student groups. I'll start with you this time, Raven. Pick one of the two groups that you're a part of, or if you want to speak a little bit about either of both of them, and tell me the kinds of programming that you do and what the goals are for that.
Well, I'll talk about Real Group. So one of the biggest events that we did was actually the first time St. David's put up our pride flag. I was
Mhm.
actually there for that. And we made a whole ceremony of it. And then every year after, we just put up the pride flag, no ceremony, no nothing, because we wanted to normalize that.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing that we did. Um, we also meet with other schools, GSA, Gay Straight Alliance. So we get to meet other people within the community and other allies. So that's,
Oh, I
yeah.
love that. And I love that it's not just localized in your particular school, that there's because of this desire to create a space where everybody feels like they belong, you're actually showing leadership in our community to speak to other people in other schools. For you, Noah, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about the kinds of programs that you've been a part of, and in particular, I want to go back to something else that Raven said around the murals and like the stuff that's on the walls and like how does that make you feel? What is the impact of that when you're walking through those hallways day to day?
Yeah. In terms of the murals and how that like impacts, I think that a lot of first off, the murals help to just brighten up the school and make it like a more fun place to be, a better place to be.
Hmm.
But specifically the murals that focus on positivity and welcoming, it's just always really nice, especially when you're walking through the halls and you're seeing someone painting a new mural, especially one that includes welcoming symbolism.
Yeah.
Really feel that the school is a place of acceptance where anyone can belong. And it's nice to see so many people putting that into artwork physically in the school.
That's also super important. The fact that the murals aren't being done when nobody is there, they're actually being done in real time, right? So you're there watching it happen. You're watching people build inclusive spaces. But that also makes me think of something else. There's a lot of conversation about ensuring that diverse people, and I'm using diverse very broadly, enter into leadership. And one of the arguments that people have put forward is that if you see yourself reflected in a space, then you, in like the younger generations, will think that they can also enter into those spaces. And I'm wondering if you folks could comment a little bit about that and whether or not you have found that by having things like these student groups, these groups that are built on inclusion in the school available for you to participate in, if you have felt more confident taking leadership positions when it comes to anything in your school or in your community. Let's start with you, Noah. What do you think? Do you think that that idea is sort of a valid idea?
Absolutely. I've attended a few Seek and Real Run just activities in the school, and I
Mhm.
can say, and like not even specific, but to all leadership groups, it's a lot easier to speak out and to talk about things and to focus on a leadership perspective when you see other students who are doing that. Um,
Hmm.
and seeing people like student trustees sitting at a table and sharing values or working with student council, it really helps to feel like you can have more of an impact. And also, when it comes to specifically Seek and Real group events, I've learned a lot more than I would have just about other people and the
Yeah.
things that matter to them and what is should be valued by society just from experiencing those. And I'm very grateful to have them.
And you know what? That's like that is what we end up seeing as that ripple effect in community. Because if you're feeling that way when you're in school and you're able to participate in these diverse experiences, then you're more likely outside of the school to participate in those experiences as well, intervening if you need to, or supporting folks when you see that they need a little bit of extra support, because it's no longer that scary type of leap. It becomes your norm. How about you, Raven? I'll repeat that question a little bit with a little bit more finesse, but um, people say that when you see yourself represented in positions of leadership, you're more inclined to participate in leadership yourself. And so I'm wondering, would you agree with that? And do you think that your participation in these groups is sort of like an example of that?
I would absolutely agree. I mean, for me, I wasn't surrounded by any like not very much diversity in my elementary school. And then I ended up going to St. David's and being part of the Catholic district school board
Mhm.
and just being around so many different groups of people and being able to be part of these clubs and showing leadership and being able to run all these events, it's made a huge impact, especially because I often find experience outside of school based on what I've learned and what I've gained through my experiences within the school.
Oh, I love that. It is so very important for us to hear from younger generations about what it is that helps them or encourages them to take on leadership roles. Because again, oftentimes, like when you think about how your curriculum is developed, it's a lot of folks that have already gone through school. Like we've been so far removed from school when we decide what you're going to teach, like what we're going to teach you, that sometimes we forget what works and what doesn't. And from what I'm hearing, it's sounding like having ensuring that these clubs are available, ensuring that the environment that you're learning in is actually reflecting the diverse community members that are literally not just in your school but in that broader community is an important part of you feeling like you could be a solid leader when you graduate. Is that something? Would that be a fair assessment? Do you think?
Yeah, and I'd add on to that, like teachers themselves having representation in teachers too is also really, really important.
Talk to me about that. Tell me why. So it's there are a lot of viewers that will watch that understand that sort of their gut will say, yeah, that makes sense. But then they don't necessarily understand on the ground why that's so important. So why don't you tell them? Tell the viewers why it is that it's so important to have diverse representation even among the teachers.
Yeah, I mean, the clubs that I'm part of, they're run by the teachers. A lot of them are student run, but we need the teachers there for the clubs to even happen.
Mhm.
And these teachers are very involved and they're very much, they want us to succeed and they help us grow. And all of our events and all of our planning and all of that, they're a part of that. And they really encourage us to go further, to be like more than what we think we can be.
Oh, I love that. Noah, what do you say about that? Why is it important to have diverse educators in your classrooms?
I would say that, like, also jumping off that, educators and teachers and also like administration and staff as a whole are looked up to by students as like the main working adults that you see in your day-to-day life.
Yeah.
And so you can like learn a lot from like what adult society values and what working society values by the working people you see every day. And I think it's really important that the educators that we see and the people who are encouraging us and giving us messages to move forward are a representation of everyone. Because if not, then it kind of limits the pool that you see of working, independent, strong people.
I love that. I love that. especially because it leaves us in a place that's going to lead really nicely into the next question. We're going to take a quick break, but for those that are watching, there is a particular situation that's arisen in the Catholic Board in Waterloo region that's caused a lot of attention in the news and on social media right now. And I think part of where the tension is that the motion, a motion that was brought to the board table is actually being brought to the board table by a person in a position of leadership. And so, what I think you folks are articulating, for me at least, is that it's important for us to stand as inclusive leaders. And when we start to do things where we have that position and we're saying or doing things that may actually work against building those inclusive spaces, people have a lot of things to say. And so, what I'm going to do is we'll take a very quick break and we'll come right back, starting with that idea. And Noah, you get ready because you are going to be the first person I ask to speak. And so, we'll take a quick break and we will be right back. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. And so, as I was saying before the break, there's something that's happened at the board table actually on March 21st or 24th. So on March 24th, a motion was tabled at the Waterloo Catholic District School Board that read in part, and I'm going to read for the viewers a few sections of this motion. I'm also going to make sure that the full motion is made accessible on this particular interview. So you'll be able to see it in the list of resources. But there are a couple clauses that are particularly important. And so in the section of the motion that starts with the whereas, there's three particular pieces that I'm just going to read to get us all on the same page. The first says, whereas there is no need nor reasonable justification for any other international political or identity-based flags to be flown, which might confuse the all-encompassing, inclusive, and fully representative natures of the Ontario and Canadian flags. And whereas there is a need to align the Waterloo Catholic District School Board with the widely held public expectation that schools should be nonpartisan, non-political institutions, and whereas ongoing complaints, protests, and delegations from the public show that the practice of flying international identity-based flags like the rainbow, pride, and progress flags remains divisive and unpopular among many Waterloo Catholic parents, constituents, and ratepayers. And it continues. I'm going to skip ahead, though, to a section of the motion that has also been circulating in the media, and I'm just going to read it again for us to all be on the same page. There's a section that talks about concerning internal flags and political symbols and slogans. And it says, so the goal of the motion is to amend the policy and protocol around which flags can be flown at the Catholic board, at schools in the Catholic board. And it says no flags may be displayed in brackets. It says fixed to a wall, pole, hanging, or on a sticker inside of the WCDSB facilities other than the flag of Canada, its provinces and territories, and the school board logo flag. No other political symbols or slogans may be displayed inside or outside WCDSB facilities. This includes on any signage, banners, pennants, posters, murals, plaques, window paintings, wall paintings, floor or ground paintings, statues, decorations, or stickers, large or small. Examples of political symbols or slogans include those associated with the Pride, Progress, and Rainbow flags, Antifa red and black flags, Don't Tread on Me snake flags, Confederate flag, BLM, which is Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, fascist iconography, the communist star, hammer, and sickle, and on and on and on it goes. I'm going to pause there because that is a lot. And I'm going to turn first to Noah to speak about this motion. Um, To date, we're told that this motion is actually going to be debated at a board meeting that's scheduled for April 28th. How has the motion impacted the communities that you're a part of? Just the mere fact that the motion has been tabled and that this agenda that includes the language of the motion is now available for all to see. What has been the impact so far?
So far, in all the communities and circles I'm a part of, there's been a lot of anger, frustration, confusion, general outrage, and a desire to fight back. People are discussing and asking how to share their voices, how to stand up, and how to make an impact against this. Um, in schools in particular, teachers and administration have made addresses, some directly about the emotion and some welcoming in general. And then, as far as it goes in the circles I am outside of school with friends or general communities, I've heard a lot about concerns from everything from specifically the LGBTQ plus group to concerns about censorship in general. And a lot of people are very much wanting to rally against it.
How about you, Raven? What has been the impact of the motion just being tabled so far?
Well, I first found out about the motion actually when I was in Real Group because the leaders brought this forward to all of us. And well, there was an outrage because we were honestly shocked that we've even gotten back to this point. Because putting the pride flag up was a symbol of inclusion and being accepted by the school. And taking that down, for us at least, is telling us that we're no longer accepted, we're no longer allowed in these schools.
Yeah, and I think it's worth us taking a step back, as difficult as the conversation is. But Raven, you mentioned being present when the pride flag was first flown at your school. Um, what can you talk a little bit about what went into getting the pride flag flown? Because I think there's also an assumption for a lot of folks that all the flags fly all the time and that the pride that there it was easy for the pride flag to be flown because it's always flown. Can you recall any time before the pride flag, what was going on that would get people to fly the pride flag, any of that kind of back at that time?
A lot of it was teachers actually.
Mhm.
Um, they were fighting for having the flag be flown during Pride Month. And so there was a lot going on before with a lot of push like for having the pride flag flown.
Mhm.
I'm not too sure, but I'm pretty sure it's been a few years, like it was a few years before that it started, but it was only like recently that it was actually possibly like thought to be put into motion.
And as you had said before, there was a ripple effect with having the pride flag flown even for the first time, and then now just knowing that it would be flown during Pride Month. Um, and so for you, Noah, do you recall when pride flags were starting to be flown on at this at during Pride Month in the Catholic board?
I do. I remember hearing a lot about it when it was first being discussed at the board level and seeing a lot of imagery.
Hmm.
I believe it started flying in elementary school for me. Um, and it might have started flying just before or in the early stages of COVID. So I
Hmm.
don't know, we didn't have in my elementary school a lot of discussion about it. Um, but I do remember later in my more senior years, grade 7 and 8, teachers would start discussing LGBTQ issues as a whole with us. And I can say that I was very proud of the board, and it felt very good to see the board accepting people of all walks of life.
Thank you to both of you for sort of going back to those moments to try to think about where you were and what that impact was at that time. Before having you folks on, I did a little bit of research myself because for those that are watching, you may know, but you may not know. I'm also a professor in at the University of Waterloo. And actually, right near the end of my time as a member of provincial parliament, there was an attack that occurred at the university in a philosophy of gender course. And the response in the broader community was actually to keep the flags flying for longer than was typical. So usually the pride flag would fly for June, for Pride Month, but there was actually a statement that was made by the Waterloo Catholic District School Board from the chair of the board and director of education at the time. So this was June 30th, 2023. And I'm just going to take a minute to read a little portion of the statement. And I'll also make sure for those that are watching that there is a link to this statement so that you can see the fuller statement. But it starts off saying, "We're saddened by the act of hate that unfolded at the University of Waterloo on Wednesday, June 28th, 2023. Our prayers go to the victims of this homophobic and transphobic attack and to the entire 2S LGBTQIA plus community. Events such as this remind us that learning institutions everywhere need to be places that promote inclusivity and acceptance and are safe spaces for all." And then it continues, "In solidarity with the University of Waterloo and the entire 2S LGBTQIA plus community, both here in Waterloo region and around the world, the Waterloo Catholic District School Board will continue to fly the pride flag at the Catholic Education Center until the end of the day on July 6th. The reason why I thought it was important to share that is that there seems to be a conflating or a some confusion around the purpose of flying the pride flag. And I would argue as a parallel, when we fly an Every Child Matters flag to support Indigenous communities who are navigating um, the the children that never came home from residential schools, when we fly a flag like the freedom flag, the flag is green and red and black that we fly during Emancipation Month, or you might have that flown at a school. When we fly a flag like Black Lives Matter to talk about injustices that Black folks have experienced, all of which are flags that are mentioned as being against the new protocol that's being proposed right now. There is literally an impact on the communities that have experienced harm, that we are trying to indicate that we want to be allies to these folks as opposed to people that harm them. And so I'm wondering, Raven, if you could take a minute to talk a little bit about what the flying of something like the pride flag means to you.
Yeah. So for me, when the pride flag first went up, it was a show of safety. It
Mm,
was to tell me that at this school, there are people that will support you, that you're accepted and that you're loved. And it was really important for me because I'm a Christian. And so having a Catholic school put up the pride flag, it was really important moment because all of the political debate all around it, it was kind of pushed to the side.
mhm,
And it was just a choice to show support for a group of people that were being marginalized.
mhm. Absolutely. And I think that that notion of using any of the tools that are available to us to demonstrate to those that are hurting that we care for them and that we stand with them, that's part of why these flags even get created. So for you, Noah, um, what does the flying, like you've spoken about your experience of, when it went up the first time, you've spoken about your experience of what it meant when you saw a motion being proposed that would have us no longer show that kind of solidarity or support. What does the flying of the flag actually mean for you? What is that story for you?
So for me, because I'm not a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I don't feel as many personal direct ties to the flag.
Hmm.
But I think that the flag, and I feel that the flag is necessary to fly because it shows support and it shows like dedication to accepting and respecting all people. And
Hmm.
so the flag and of all other symbols and flags of acceptance like that, to me, are a reminder to ensure that I am supporting as many people as possible and
Hmm.
uh, a moment to be grateful of the fact that there's so many different people of many walks of life around me that I can learn from and experience things with.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to do something that I often do, which is take my own medicine and add my voice to that because I don't identify as a member of the queer communities that are out there. I don't identify as Indigenous. I do identify as Black. And my feeling when I see a poster that says BLM or Black Lives Matter when it's fully spelled out makes me feel like I, as a Black community member, do belong inside that space, that I could go somewhere if I needed help and I would be helped. But I also know that when I see a pride flag up, the progress flag up, when I see an Every Child Matters banner or flag up, both in and outside of a school setting, I feel like it's a reminder to me as an ally to those folks that they were there for me because they also had the BLM flag up. And so I'm going to be there for them. It actually helps me to be a better person, or at least to strive to be a better person. And so, what I'm going to do is take another break. And I'm going to ask folks as they are taking this commercial break to think about that. What is it that you can do to be a better ally to all of these causes? And what does the flying or not flying of one of these flags that actually is meant to indicate inclusion mean to you? So we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. During the break, actually, Raven raised something that I would love for us to start this section off with. You mentioned to me that it's not just the flags, it's actually bigger and broader than that. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Raven. When you say it's not just the flags, what else is it?
Yeah, I mean, in the actual motion itself, it says flags, posters, stickers, murals, etc. And I know for me at least, there's a lot of things that I would get impacted with just with all of those excluding flag. My
Hmm.
laptop is covered in LGBT stickers. And I'd either have to rip all of those down or get a new laptop should the motion pass. I also know that some of my friends actually brought this up in Model United Nations, Model UN, that's another club I'm in. We have the Model UN flag that we fly. We wouldn't even be allowed to have that as well, even though it's the United Nations flag.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Noah, what are you thinking when Raven said to me, it's not just the flags, it's so much bigger? What did that make you think about?
I that made me think a lot about some of the conversations I've had, and a big topic around that is it's not just an LGBTQ plus issue; it's a censorship issue, and
Mm,
there's a lot of. It's also not even just getting rid of flags; it's getting rid of slogans as well, like removing political slogans and wording would
hmm.
be a huge issue. And in specifically talking about murals, I know a lot of people who have painted a mural that may have a slogan or a small pride flag or an icon in the background, and that would need to be completely painted over. And I know that that is very frustrating for a lot of people. And I feel like it would also take a big hit to the school communities because
Hmm.
there wouldn't even be able have that much internal support, at least not visibly.
Yeah, and you know what? You both raise another really good point because what I'm hearing on my end is that there's a collapsing of what we do because we care about other communities and what is now being labeled as quote unquote political. And I think that that's a conversation that we actually have to have. I always find it fascinating when um, resistance efforts to being harmed. So when something isn't working for us, and then we come together to try and bring attention to the broader system about what the impact is of some of their policies or their decisions, that as soon as we say the system isn't working, anything that comes out of our mouth after that is called political. But I want people to start to take a step back and think about it as care. Because if queer community members in a school are saying that they aren't feeling like they can come with their whole self, like this is happening at the same time that we're seeing challenges to library holdings, for instance. Um, and so, if folks are saying that they don't feel like they can bring their whole self to school, then asking them what they need, and they say, well, the pride flag symbolizes blah, blah, blah. And then we're just like, yeah, but you can't have that. Then I don't think that we're doing a very good job of being caring and kind. And I don't think that that's a political take. I actually feel like that's just, are we a caring community or are we not? Have you folks in your own circles had conversations about what is being politicized and what is, and that idea of depoliticizing? Has that come up, Raven, Noah, either of you?
Yeah, I know for me, I have a lot of friends who are very active and very like they're into activism.
Hmm.
And so this topic has been really prevalent in my circles. And one of the main issues that's come up is that this is a human rights issue. It's not a political issue. The
Yeah.
pride flag, the Black Lives Matter flag, the Every Child Matters flag, all of these are about marginalized groups of people. These are about things people can't change. It's just who they are. So it's
Yeah.
a human rights issue, not a political issue. That's the main thing that's come out of my conversations.
That's extremely brilliant, and I think you folks should be in charge of all of us. Noah, has that conversation come up with in your circles as well? Like what is now being politicized?
Yeah, I don't think I could say it better than Raven in the sense that it is very much discussed as a human rights issue in the sense of everyone I've been speaking to and all the circles I've been in.
Mhm.
It's it's really just a point of sharing a viewpoint and sharing a perspective and making people feel welcomed and good, and that shouldn't be an issue regarding politics or legislation.
Thank you both for that. And in fact, for those that are watching, I'm also going to um, provide a link to the Ontario Human Rights Commission. Because one of the things that folks don't realize is that the Human Rights Code is meant to be proactive, not reactive. And so I'm also quite worried that when we have these kinds of conversations and we deem them political, and in the when we say the word political, we think we mean political parties. So it's like we're picking a party over education. We forget that part of our job as duty holders in Ontario and actually across this country is to be proactive in the measures that we take to ensure that nobody's rights are actually being trampled. And that everybody is allowed to thrive, especially in spaces that are covered by the code, which in this case include the school. And so I'll make sure that we have that I have a link to some of the language that the OHRC uses, because oddly enough, this is happening at the same time that the OHRC just launched a new report called Dreams Delayed, and it's about anti-Black racism in Ontario schools. And so any school that receives funding from the provincial government is considered part of this report, and the duty holders are being called to do their work. And I would argue that this motion actually impedes their ability to do that, and that it broadens it to hurt an even larger swath of people, which is actually the opposite of what we should be doing when we uphold the code. So, on that happy note, I am going to ask you both one other question. Um, I'm curious about what advocacy has actually looked like for you folks, because again, we often think that it's all the grown-ups that have to have this fight, and on the ground are a lot of students who are stepping up and showing leadership when it comes to the issues that you folks have raised. So, Raven, I'm going to start with you again. What has advocacy looked like for you, whether in your circles or advocacy that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, first off, one of the biggest things was actually Noah texted me telling me that he was going to delegate and asking for my opinion on that. And that made me want to delegate as well. Unfortunately, they're all completely full for the 28th. They filled up really fast. Um, but I also went to the meeting on in March and saw Noah's speech and was there with the protest, and it was brilliant. I also emailed all of the trustees, asking them to reconsider and to think about just who and how many people this is going to be impacting.
Um, so for those that are watching, Noah's delegation is actually included in the agenda for the board meeting. What was the date of that board meeting? I do
24th, I believe.
24th, yeah. And so I actually have I have that linked to this episode so that you can see that. Thank you so much for that. And Raven, the email that you sent to the trustees, if with your permission, I would never do it without, but if you send that to me, I could actually also include that as part of the resources so that folks can see the kinds of letter, like a sample letter that they could also write if they want to get involved. I'm a big believer that part of the goal of this program is to encourage people to get involved. And so with your permission, send that over to me and I can have it shared as a sample letter. How's that
Yeah,
sound? Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, beautiful. And Noah, we already know a little bit about what you've done, but talk about that. What has advocacy look like from your circles?
Yeah. First off, thank you, Raven. And yeah, to start the journey recently, I delegated to the board to try and prevent them from removing the flag and LGBTQ literature. At the time, I didn't even know of the upcoming motion. Since then, I have talked with a WCDSB graduate, Aaliyah Porin, and we made a Instagram uh, post, an Instagram account called Celebration of Expression to try and stop this, the censorship focus. She's really been taking the full lead on it and making posts and information about how to delegate, how to get your voice heard, who to contact, when the trustee meetings are to attend. And yeah, I'm just trying to continue push that as much as possible. I'm planning to attend the upcoming meetings and give as much information as possible regarding how to delegate or have your voice heard.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to also give you some homework because why not? I'm going to ask you to share with me the Insta handle so that I can make sure that folks also have access to that that are watching the show. That is fantastic, literally fantastic. So before I go to like my favorite part of the show, I just want to take a second and say thank you. Um, to you, Noah, and to you, Raven, for using your voice and recognizing that we are only disempowered when we say we don't have any power. That you folks have used the tools that you have access to so creatively is something that a lot of us can, we actually look up to people that step into leadership roles that way. And so I feel like we're in this moment in history where we're looking up to the younger generation who are just demanding that the world be a better place. And so thank you, Noah, for the work that you're doing. Thank you, Raven, for the work that you're doing. And thank you to those folks that are on the ground behind the scenes, also trying to make sure that this world is a better place. And with that in mind, I'm going to ask you my favorite question in the whole entire world. I ask everybody this because it is important for us to speak into the universe what we want, not just what we don't want. And so, if you could snap your fingers and make one system change, what would that be? And we're going to start with Noah.
In terms of just like making a quick system change, I was. I guess it's a bit less of a change and more of a continuation or an enforcement, which is this was brought up in the meeting at some point by Trustee Weiler, but the bylaws and of the WCDS board of the WCDSB board prevent them from officially making this decision, and it should not be in the power of the trustees to vote on this. And if I could make one system change or one system, I guess, enforcement in this case, I would want that policy to be enforced strongly.
Oh, wow, Noah, that is very, very, very important. And so, one of the other things that I'm going to do for those that are watching is try and see if I can find where these policy statements are so that you can take a look yourself. You can read and understand where that kind of a system change is coming from. Thank you so much for that. Raven, over to you. Snap your fingers, make one system change. What would it be?
I think for me, just because of how the school groups have been so important for me and for my community, just protecting those groups, especially because Real Group actually, we used to be called the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance. But that was actually taken away from us. They were going to take away the entire group. We renamed it Real Group so that we could stay as a group. So
Mhm.
protecting all of these clubs and all of these groups and all of these students would be my choice.
Thank you so much for that, Raven. And again, thank you for your creative approach to try to navigate some of the things that are happening in the system. Because I really do think that people, when we have these big kinds of moments and they make it to the news and people are all nervous and scared, you feel disempowered. But what the two of you are showing us throughout this entire interview is that we have tools. We have tools to make the world a better place. And if we stay committed to trying to ensure that we do, in fact, make people feel loved, cared for, held, seen, that we can create the world that we keep saying that we want. So thank you. Thank you, Raven, and thank you, Noah, for joining me today. I so very much appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. And folks that are watching, we will be right back after this break. Hello and welcome back. Aren't Noah and Raven amazing? I think they should be in charge of all of us. But for now, while we are still the adults doing the adulting, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure, as per usual, that I have some resources that you will have access to. I will include the Waterloo Catholic District School Board's March 24th agenda so you can see the motion in full. You'll also be able to see and read Noah's delegation because that's included in the package. I'll have a couple articles that are talking about this particular motion and the impact of it, including two members of provincial parliament who have actually spoken out about this motion. The MPP for Waterloo, Catherine Fife, has spoken out and is included in some of these articles. And so is the MPP for Kitchener Centre, Ashlyn Clancy, who has also spoken out about this notice of motion. And so their information will be in there. I will definitely have a link to the petition that has been going around about this. And as promised, I'm going to have a copy of Raven's letter to the trustees that you can use as a sample if you want to get involved and make sure that your voice is heard, as well as the Insta handle for the Instagram account that Noah was speaking of. We'll be sure that you have that so you can follow them and keep abreast of what's happening there. And the last thing that I'm going to do is to make sure that there is some information about the Ontario Human Rights Commission and the fact that the goal of upholding the code is actually to be proactive. And so all of this you'll find in the resource section. And don't forget to follow me at everydaypolitics_official so that you can get a sense of what it is that we're talking about on the show. You can spread the word and you can stay connected and involved. We'll see you next time.